Before we get any further, I would like to, on behalf of AIMS Australia, acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of these lands on which we work, live and meet today. We pay respects to their elders past and present and recognise their continuing connection to country, land, waters, sky and cultures past and present. I'm joining you all today from Naarm, Melbourne, the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Now, the reason we're here today is AIMS Australia is really pleased to host this webinar as part of the Multicultural Learning Partnership, a Victorian government-funded initiative. The project is designed to highlight barriers, but more so solutions through knowledge sharing of practices that make a difference for getting people from multicultural backgrounds into safe and secure jobs. This can require changing attitudes and workplace practices. This is the fourth webinar in a series, and we continue the conversation with you all as critical stakeholders working with multicultural communities. Other webinars will extend this conversation in the coming months as well, which you all will be invited to. Part of this project is that it will result in a toolkit, which will include practical strategies to support all of you and your organisations working with multicultural job seekers. And we are very pleased to have two wonderful speakers with us today. Before I introduce them, I'd just like to point out that the presentations will go for roughly 30 minutes. There will be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions throughout the presentation to our speakers, please put those in the chat function and we'll try and address them all at the end. If we do run out of time, because you all have so many exciting questions, the speakers have agreed they will take them on notice and will provide written answers after the session when we send out the slides as well. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our two speakers of today, Bui Thai and Samira Fieldgrass. Bui is the Deputy Chairperson at the Victorian Multicultural Commission and is a spirited advocate for Multicultural Australia. He works to develop the capacity of multicultural communities with a focus on leadership development, education and employment outcomes. Bui is also a member of our project's reference group. Samira is a practice lead at the Centre for Multicultural Youth with extensive experience working with vulnerable young people at risk and young offenders. She's skilled at brokering positive relationships with the community, presence in schools, as well as with key stakeholders, families, and the wider community. So without further ado, I will now hand over to Bui that will kick us off for the next 15 minutes.
Thank you, Angelica. I would also like to echo and acknowledge that I'm joining in from traditional lands and that I pay my respect to the elders past and present. Good afternoon, everyone. It's fantastic to see so many familiar faces, but also new faces. And it's exciting that we are here together to discuss and talk about community engagement and why it's important, a topic that is very close to my heart. Before I speak further, I thought I would take the opportunity to also acknowledge the incredible work that AIMS Australia is doing behind the scene to bring about these webinars that are so critical and so important. And so thank you to Angelica and the team for hosting these forums. As mentioned, I sit on the Multicultural Learning Partnership Reference Group and also the Governance Group. And so for me, it's a privilege to see how this program has been coming together on both lenses and the ongoing commitment, the strong commitment that has been shown by AIMS Australia and all the other partners who are on the reference group and the governance group. Just briefly about the Victorian Multicultural Commission and the work we do so that it gives a bit of context for all of us to understand much more how important community engagement is to the VMC. The VMC was established 40 years ago as a statutory body and to advocate for and act as a conduit between communities and governments. And we are enshrined through the Multicultural Victorian Act 2011. And our functions basically includes working with community leaders, community representatives, and faith leaders. And the commission is, I guess, set up with 12 commissioners, with our chairperson, Vivian Nguyen, and myself as the deputy. And then we have 10 commissioners. One is a youth commissioner, and another one is a community representative. And so we work very closely with I guess, in this beautiful state, we work with so many community champions. And one of the formal platform that we work with is through the Regional Advisory Council, also known as RAC. Victoria is divided into 8 Regional Advisory Council areas with over 220 representatives, community leaders on it. And basically, it has 5 regional RACs, and we have 3 metro base. We also have another platform that we work with called the Multi-Faith Advisory Group, also known as the MAGD, where over 30 faith organizations are represented. And then we have another platform called the Multicultural Youth Network, which comprise of 20 young people from diverse backgrounds across Victoria, who provide us insight into issues that impact multicultural young people. And final but not the least, we have the Multicultural Business Network Group, where Chamber of Commerce, business groups come together to discuss on how the business sector can better support our multicultural communities. And so the VMC, through its advocacy, sit on a number of interdepartmental committees, task force, advisory committee, grant panel across government departments and agencies, and also non-for-profit and also academic. And coming to the next part, I thought I'll briefly mention about the diversity we have here in Victoria. And I think it's important to bring out these numbers to the forefront because it's an exciting time in Victoria's history, where we have roughly about 50% of Victorians who have at least one parent born overseas. And that diversity is growing and projected to grow in the future. We have over 130 faith represented here in our state. And we can also see that with the increase of the diversity, also the faith is there. And it really, I guess, shows the depth of the diversity we have here in Victoria. Of course, with diversity also comes challenges, and with that also comes opportunity. So I want to put that out there. And also, I guess we have nearly roughly about 28% of Victorians speak a language other than English, which I think is quite fascinating, given that language is a window into a culture. And so we are very fortunate and blessed that we live in a state where our communities can celebrate their rich heritage, but also have that opportunity to share and also learn. Through the work that we do at the Commission, there are 4 broad areas which I thought I'll briefly mention. The first pillar is the community engagement, which includes working with those regional advisory council, the multi-faith, multicultural youth network group, but also working with peak body organizations and community-based organizations. The second pillar is around advocacy, system change, around data collection, measuring of that, and also, I guess, promoting the importance of cultural diversity and inclusion in our workforce and in boards. And also through that advocacy, we provide feedback to the government, department, and agencies, both through submissions, but also through the interdepartmental committees that we sit on. The third pillar is the promotion piece that we work on in terms of bringing about visibility to our community through celebrations of Cultural Diversity Week, which also coincide with the elimination of racial discrimination, the Premier's Multicultural Gala Dinner, the Multicultural Film Festivals, and through the awards and recognition like the Multicultural Awards for Excellence, the Honor Roll, and the Victorian Refugee Awards, really highlighting, working our way to highlight the diversity, but also how they enrich our state. So, and final but not the least, the fourth pillar is working around government priorities on legislative changes and policies, including the anti-vilification protection laws, family violence, diversity in the VPS, mental health and well-being in more recent times. In saying that, the core background or the core work we do is only possible through the deep community engagement we do and the relationship we establish with our communities. And Samira can expand more to that, and I look forward to hearing from her. If we look at it in a holistic approach, I guess, why is community engagement important? And it's all about empowering the communities. And so in recent times, we've heard buzzwords like co-design, which are quite fascinating. But I want to remind everyone here on board that co-designs, in order to have a holistic or better outcomes from co-design, we need to take the community on the journey with us so that we can have that deep understanding on issues that impact them and the solutions we can come up together. But consultation is one part. We also need to take the community on that journey through delivering it together and also evaluating it together. And this has shown that a greater success rate, but also shows how communities can contribute even more to that. So it is best practice, but also, as I often say, it's not just the right thing to do, but it's a smart thing to do, because you can harness all of what the community can offer you, who are your critical stakeholders. As bad as the pandemic was that impacted our lives, there were a lot of good lessons learned from that. And here in Victoria, I think we saw that deep community engagement was critical to how we came out of that pandemic. I, for one, don't like comparison, but I think we saved many lives and our communities were safe because of the deep community engagement where we were working with trusted community leaders, providing higher translated materials, but also audio and video. And faith leaders also played a critical role. There was, in the initial phrase, there was a phrase that was put forward where they said, oh, it's hard to reach communities. But how can a community be hard to reach if we're only engaging with them through keyboards? And we all know that as practitioners, that keyboard community engagement can have its limitation. And so building that relationship, being out there with the community is so critical so that communities can build that trust and that relationship with us. Also, I think there has been a toolkit that has, and a guideline that has been developed through the Multicultural Learning Partnership. I want to encourage you all to utilize it, have a read through it, get in touch with AIMS, and see how you can bring those toolkits to life. And one final piece I thought I would add here is that when we engage with our communities, best practice should be all about sharing. And as my son often reminds me, sharing is caring. So when we're doing best practice and sharing that with our peers across sector is also very, very critical. And of course, the final point around working with our communities, we do know that often our communities say to us that they have consultation fatigue. And this is a result of, I think, us as practitioners not acknowledging to the full potential of the contribution that our community stakeholders have. And so things like remuneration, compensation should be added into the plan from the get-go. And I often say this, that, not having resource or budget for that shouldn't be used as an excuse. It could be big or small, but also it could be professional development opportunities. We do know that community-based organizations are volunteers who would really benefit from capacity building, something that your organization or your institution or the people that you work with could add on to that. And so there are many ways on how you could get creative on that space. I know my time's about to run out, and before Angelica puts me away, I just thought some of the key areas that priority areas that the VMC is currently working on, just so that you know what we're working on and how can we continue that conversation beyond today's webinar on how we can work together. Some of the priorities include, and in no order, but I'll just name them out, around mental health and well-being for our communities, social cohesion, family violence, youth engagement, employment, training, and economic inclusion, around housing, justice system, and also final pieces around system change. And those are the areas that we are a priority for us as a commission and things we'll be working on. So if you are working in any of those areas, please do reach out to us. We always have an open door policy, and that we are very much keen to working with new key stakeholders. And I think looking at our state in terms of budget and in terms of resource, sometimes it would be challenging to work in silos, and I highly encourage us here who have come together to work in partnership, so that the programs or the things that we do, the initiatives that we establish or deliver, can have greater impact for our communities. I'll end it with there because I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A. So I'll hand over the time back to Angelica. Thank you.
Thanks, Boy. Thank you so much. Really insightful to hear directly from you what VMC does in this space. And for those of you who want to learn more about VMC in the different areas that Boy just mentioned, we will be including contact details to Boy and VMC and other resources as well after the webinar. So we will be sharing that with everyone. Now, I will hand over to Samira, our second speaker, and I will get the slides up for you as well.
Thanks, Angelica. Hi, everyone. I'm trying not to look at the participant list down the bottom because it says something like 109 people. So I've minimized my screen. There's only about 10 of you on my screen, which is quite nice. So welcome, everyone. I want to thank Boy. It's always really informative and enlightening to hear you speak. And I always remember Boy saying something in a webinar I did with him a while back about how to reach communities. And it really resonated with me because Boy said these communities are not hard to reach. They're on our doorstep, and we really have to sit back and question what is it about us and our organizations that keep saying hard to reach, and what can we do within our power. And you used a lovely phrase, Boy. I think you turned it on its head, but I can't quite recall what you said. It will come to me. So welcome, everyone. My name is Samira. I feel I have a minute per slide, so I will try not to talk quickly. Next slide, please, Angelica. I just want to take a minute to also acknowledge I am joining you from beautiful Wurundjeri land today, and I just want to take a minute to acknowledge our traditional owners whose countries we have the privilege to live, work and play on. I want to extend that respect to any Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us here today, and pay my respect to elders and ancestors who have passed, and acknowledge the continuing connection and care to land, sea and community. Next slide, please, Angelica. I'll just give you a bit of context about myself and the organisation I work for. So as Angelica introduced me, I'm the practice lead for the Centre for Multicultural Youth. And for those of you that don't know, the Centre for Multicultural Youth is a non-for-profit organisation. We're based in Victoria, but we have offices all over, some in Sunshine, in Wyndham, in Melton, in Dandenong, and we also have some regional offices as well, in Gippsland and Southeast regions, Ballarat as well. Our work really centres on elevating youth voice, and we work with young people to remove the barriers that they face as they make Australia their home. We do this through a combination of support services. We do case management, we do assertive outreach, sector capacity building, advocacy, training, and knowledge sharing as well. So we are extending into our growth corridors as well. And as we get more funding, I'm really proud to say that CMY celebrated our 35th year anniversary this year as well. So we've been around for quite a while. Next slide, please. Thank you, Angelica. So I'm going to give you a bit of context about what I'm going to speak about today. So we were really privileged this year to do a great piece of co-design and co-delivery with young people. And we partnered up with Anglicare Victoria to look at multicultural young people and their experiences of the family violence sector. So I know you're all joining from a range of sectors today, but I feel where you have interaction with young people and families, it's really important for us to consider how we work with those young people, particularly migrant youth, around presentations around family violence and being victim survivors in their own right. So to give you a bit of context of the research, there was very little as far as multicultural young people. What we were finding, there was a lot of research done on young people, so namely children, kind of birth to maybe say 10, 11, and then thankfully there's been a lot more investment and acknowledgement of adult family victim survivors of family violence. Now, there was a few reports that had been done that really formed the foundation of the work that we did, one of which I'm proud to say CMY did a bit of kind of advocacy work in the space. MCM did a magnificent report on young people in the family violence sector, which concentrated a lot on young people themselves using violence within the home as well and what that looked like. Monash University did the I Believe You report, and then there was also the Family Violence Reform Implementation report that came out as well. So what we were finding was that young people, young multicultural people in their own right, weren't really having that focus and were getting either services weren't accessible to them or they felt very disempowered to access services. Next slide, please, Angelica. Whilst we're on that, I'd really want to take a minute, given the current climate as well, to acknowledge all the work we do in family violence. And I want to take a moment to honour victim survivors of family violence, anyone here who has lived experience themselves, for those joining us today, and for those we have the privilege to work with, those who live in silence and those who tragically are no longer with us. In this work, it's really important that we elevate your stories and keep your survival as core. Thank you, Angelica. Next slide. So like I said at the beginning, a bit of a project overview. We partnered with Anglicare Victoria, who compared to us, we always laugh about this, they're a beast of an organisation, which do some really important work in this field. So they are leaders in family violence and have some magnificent programmes. We obviously work with multicultural youth, and we are very good at youth work. What we were finding was that there was a real gap in between. So we were finding within the family violence sector, there was pockets of great work. Within youth work organisations, there was pockets of great work. And I found the more I was talking to people, family violence workers were saying, oh, We can do the family work and we can work with children. However, we don't quite know how to work with young people, particularly when those intersections of multiculturalism and other intersections were coming into play as well. So what we aimed to do was increase access to culturally safe and appropriate family violence support for multicultural young people. And so that was within the youth sector, and also increase specialist family violence and youth sector practitioner confidence to engage and respond to multicultural young people experiencing family violence. So not an easy feat, as we know, talking about family violence generally within our populations is not easy. When we're talking to young people who feel very marginalized and out of the mainstream, it's even harder. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what we hoped, we started the program back in January, late January, February of last year, and we have just wrapped it up. Some of you might have known we had a big launch in February to launch the report that came out of this work. And what we anticipated was that after we consulted with our young people in our communities and we came up with some guidelines for the sector, that we would increase intersectional ways of working. Now, those of you that have been in the field for a while will know that intersectionality has become a bit of a buzzword. To actually see it in practice it's great when it happens, but I feel we still work in silos. So I know I can say for ourselves at the Centre for Multicultural Youth, we do very good multicultural youth work. However, there's some intersections we don't do that well. And I'm sure every sector has their own thing that they feel they do well. But when we're dealing with different intersections within the community, people want some more guidance and support around that. We really hope that there was an increase in collaboration between organisations and the sector as well to support young people, increase referral pathways, and really elevating that lived experience from young people themselves. So lots of peer-led work, which I'll go on to talk about in a minute. And we really wanted to concentrate our efforts on prevention and early intervention. I feel what we find often, lots of organisations get involved when it's a crisis point, and we kind of throw our hands up in the air and said, gosh, if this referral had come through last year and when things started, we could have made more of an impact. So that was our anticipated outcomes. We're still very early on in the piece. Thank you, Angelica. So I would really like to take a moment to talk about safe and meaningful youth engagement around family violence and gender equity. We're very fortunate at CMY that we have a youth leadership team, and we have lots of concentration in the community for groups of young people who really want to make a difference in their community. What we were finding, however, that when we were talking to young people, there was, like I said at the beginning, a real limited availability of research data and information, specifically around gender-based violence with multicultural young people. Now, I could probably talk all day long about why this was, but I only have a limited time today. But we know that, like I said before, young people, communities as a general don't like to air their dirty laundry. We don't talk about family violence. When it comes to multicultural communities, the barriers to accessing support and talking are tenfold. What we did know was that young people were telling us there was a huge clash between their youth perspectives about gender and gender equity and what their elders were saying or what they were finding within their community. And sometimes that could be around cultural traditions, norms, values, beliefs. And what we found was interesting, that sometimes family violence in the Western world, if you like, was almost being excused and masked behind religion and culture. And our young people were up in arms and saying, no, there's no culture or religion in the world that will excuse family violence. So they really wanted to unpack this and talk to people around, well, actually, what is this expectation or what's this perception that people have around certain multicultural communities that prevents them from engaging. And I used to often, I've been in practice, I'm showing my age now, but for more than 2 decades. And I'd often feel from mainstream organisations, there was a reluctance to get involved or ask questions because people felt they didn't want to open a can of worms or they didn't want to delve into people's private lives. So there was a real passion from the young people we work with around actually exploring that and dispelling some myths around family violence. What we were finding as well, there was different access to education in respectful relationships and violence prevention, whether that was in the community, through the home, or through schools as well. Next slide, please, Angelica. So how did we involve young people? Our project team conducted consultations across Melbourne Metro and also regional Victoria. The reason I really want to emphasise regional Victoria is our colleagues up in Gippsland and in Barwon will say they're often bottom of the pool. So when we're speaking, when I spoke about those intersections before, we're talking about marginalised young people from multicultural communities. When we spoke to our colleagues in Barwon and Gippsland, they were saying the issues there are so different to what our young people in Melbourne Metro were experiencing as well. And we were finding a lot of the cohort we spoke to up there were younger as well. So we were getting a lot richer data. The way we did this, we did focus groups that were held with, in total, 35 young people. They were aged from 14 up to 27, and they were from first and second generation migrant and refugee backgrounds. Our participants reflected 21 cultural backgrounds, and it was so amazing to look at the breakdown of what those cultural groups were. 6 of the young people also reviewed our framework draft. So what we did, we initially consulted with a group of young people, and they ranged from our youth leadership, our YAGs, our reference groups, down to young people who were working one-to-one or in small groups with our youth support staff as well. So we really made sure we got a range, because what we were finding, there's those young people who are really passionate and really active within their community, who were articulate to speak about, but we wanted to question, what about those young people that are falling through the net and probably didn't get the voice or access to air their views. So we really made sure we were reflective of that. What we found, and I really like what Boy said, it's all fair enough saying we want to co-design and we want to consult with youth communities, but what we were finding was that the drop-off then was that, great, we've got your knowledge and information, and now leave it to us as experts, and we'll write up a fancy report, we'll get more funding, we'll do this. And what young people were telling us, that they were sick and tired of people consulting with them and then using their knowledge and their stories to go and, and this is their words, to get promotions for themselves or to grow their programs. So it was really important for us to acknowledge and honour the knowledge that was being shared by young people. So the way we did that was, there was a lot of dulling of our own egos, I guess, as workers, and actually losing some of that control and saying to the young people, these are your stories, this is your knowledge. My role here is to shape this knowledge and present it back to the community and the public. So what we did, we wrote up an initial draft. We then called some of the young people back in. There were 6 representatives across the original group that we consulted with, and we got them to review some of our findings. And then we also had a leadership review across Anglicare and CMY, and we had our work peer reviewed as well. 3 of the young people then assisted to deliver our program. So they were at our forum launch, and they also worked with our sector capability team in developing workshops and helping the sector embed some of the practice as well. Next slide, please, Angelica. What strategies did we use? So we knew that co-design and involving young people's perspectives was really important to promote leadership and advocacy. And like I said, the way we did that was to involve them from the beginning through to the end. And beyond. And we really wanted consultation to move from just hearing young people's voices and then using their work to actually elevating their voices and seeing how we can involve them in the job space, within our organisation and beyond as well. So like I said, we're very fortunate at CMY. We have a very active youth leadership space, and that involves skilling up and training young people to go and deliver in schools, your places of employment. We also have a fabulous programme called Seat at the Table, which recognises that 1/3 of every university applicant is a female from a migrant background. However, only 5% go on into leadership jobs. So we actively work with young people who have aspirations and a passion to work in leadership, to be active on boards, to be active in the community and with organisations as well. So that's something really exciting we're proud to do. We knew it was important to discuss topics that were relevant to our communities and explore diverse perspectives as well. So like we always say here, we like to create frameworks and models of work that are by young people for the young people. And we utilise active advocates as consultation groups for organisations and government, like I mentioned before as well. Next slide, please, Angelica. What did we learn? I have no qualms in saying that our young people are brutally honest with us. And sometimes when we did our consultations, there were things that we heard that, we weren't expecting to hear. And what I found from that, it was a real wake-up call for the sector, for our sector as a youth organisation. But what I found our colleagues at Anglicare were saying, it was a bit of a wake-up call for them as well. What I found when we went back and did the review, they pulled our work to pieces, and it was really interesting to actually, like I said, relinquish some of that control from us as workers, and give it back to the young people. What was really beautiful to hear when we did our framework launch was smaller organisations coming up to us and saying, actually, this gives me hope about how small grassroots organisations can work in collaboration with bigger NGOs and do some of this consultation work, but also the co-design and co-delivery. We at CMY, like I said, are very passionate about centering youth voice. Everything we do, we like to start from that youth voice. And particularly in the family violence field, we wanted to elevate that voice of young people as victim survivors in their own right. It was also very important learning for us to raise awareness across communities and organisations as to the detection, the response, and the roles we can all play in supporting victim survivors as well. Next slide, please, Angelica. So what now? We've done all this fantastic work, and I always say, as we're talking to organisations, the last thing we want is that we come up with this lovely glossy framework and it sits on people's shelves gathering dust. So what we really want to do at CMY, we've designed a workshop for the sector to assist them in embedding this framework and bringing the work to life. And one thing I really want to emphasise today, we were finding a lot of people were coming up to us and saying, look, I work at Centrelink, or I work for AIMS, or I work for Foundation House. I'm not a family violence worker. How do I do this work? And one of the messaging that the young people wanted to say, you don't have to be an expert in this space. We all know that, in the child safety realm, a young person discloses abuse to at least 7 people before they're actually believed. It's the same with family violence as well. So what young people were saying to us, it takes one person that I can build trust with and that I feel safe to share my story with. Now, what's so important is what we do with that story. So, we really wanted to elevate that it's about secondary consult. It's about you're not doing this work alone. And it's about really hearing young people's voices and what they want you to do with that information as well. So we're exploring ways in which our youth peers can train up other young people to deliver this message. And a group of our young people are working really hard with our sector capability team to see how we can take this out to the sector and improve services across your organisations as well. We're also lucky that CMY has a pool of young people in our youth leadership space who can work with different organisations, with schools and across the sector to help you elevate youth voice as well. Next slide, please. I think that's it. I don't know if I'm in time because I can't see the clock, but we'll send out these slides as well, and I can send you the framework and some resources. But we do also have 2 direct service delivery components to our work as well, so we can support young people who are victim survivors in their own right and are using violence in the home, or and I can send you contacts. So that's it from me. I did see my chat function blowing up, so I will check them now. That's the end of my part.
Samira.
Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and yes, as Samira said, we will be sharing these slides with you afterwards as well, with all the information and contact details there too. I hope all of you found that really insightful. I at least did, both Wei and Samira highlighting firstly some really key principles that we should all take away when we continue to engage with our communities, but also learnings from Samira's example of that project, which could be applied to any topic really, rather than just looking at that